The police arrested me at my mother's funeral. 1 minute, I was standing beside her open grave, listening to the pastor speak about love, loyalty, and the life we leave behind. The next minute, 2 detectives were walking toward me through the wet grass. My husband, Daniel, did not look surprised. Neither did my younger sister, Megan. That was the moment I understood something terrible. My mother was dead, my name had been destroyed, and the 2 people I trusted, most had already decided what story the world would believe about me. The detective asked if I was Claire Bennett. I said yes. He told me I was under arrest for stealing more than $800,000 from Bennett Senior Living, the company my mother had spent 30 years building. Every face turned toward me. I could hear people whispering. I could hear a camera clicking. I could hear my own breathing, fast and shallow, as one detective pulled my hands behind my back. I looked at Daniel. "Tell them," I said. "Tell them this is a mistake." He lowered his eyes. Megan stepped closer to him. Not to me. To him. Then she reached for his hand. That small movement hurt more than the handcuffs. I had known for 3 weeks that my husband was having an affair. I just had not known it was with my sister. And I had not known they were planning to send me to prison. I wish I could say I fought. I wish I could say I screamed the truth across the cemetery. But I was too shocked. My mother's casket was 10 feet away. Rain was running down my face. My wrists were locked in steel. As the detectives led me toward their car, Megan called after me. "We'll take care of everything." Her voice was soft and sweet. The same voice she had used since childhood, whenever she wanted people to believe she was the good daughter. I turned and looked at her. She was wearing my mother's pearl earrings. That was when my grief became anger, and that anger kept me alive. My mother, Evelyn Bennett, had founded Bennett Senior Living in Columbus, Ohio, after my father died. She started with 1 small care home and 6 residents. By the time I was 38, the company owned 4 facilities and employed more than 200 people. My mother never became soft because of money. She still clipped coupons. She still drove an old blue Bic. She still called every resident by name. I worked beside her for 15 years. Megan did not. Megan liked the family name, the family house, and the family money. She liked charity dinners and photographs. She liked calling herself a business consultant, even though she had never stayed in one job for more than a year. Daniel had been our chief financial officer for 7 years. He was careful, charming, and patient. He knew how to make nervous people feel safe. That was one reason I married him. It was also the reason I did not see the trap. At the police station, the detective showed me bank records, company transfers, and electronic approvals carrying my name. Money had moved from Bennett Senior Living into 3 shell companies. From there, it had gone into overseas accounts. My login had approved every transfer. My digital signature appeared on every document. There were emails from my company account telling Daniel to hide the payments from my mother. One message said, "Evelyn is getting suspicious. We need to finish before she changes the trust." I had never written those words. I told the detectives that. They listened politely, but they had already spoken to Daniel. He had given them copies of the company records. He had also told them I had become desperate after learning my mother planned to leave control of the company to Megan. That was another lie. My mother would never have trusted Megan with the business. But the detectives had something worse than records. They had a video. It showed a woman entering the company office late at night. She wore my coat, carried my purse, and used my security code. The camera angle hit her face, but the height and body shape looked like mine. The coat had disappeared from my closet a month earlier. I had assumed I left it at work. Now I knew Megan had taken it. I spent that night in a holding cell. Daniel did not answer my calls. My attorney, a public defender named Rachel Kim, met me the next morning. She was young, direct, and far more serious than anyone expected from a court-appointed lawyer. She told me the evidence was strong. She also told me the judge might release me before trial if I surrendered my passport and accepted electronic monitoring. Then she asked the question no one else had asked. Who benefits if you go to prison? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. My husband, my sister, maybe both. Rachel studied me. Then we stopped thinking like a defendant for 1 minute. We start thinking like people investigating a theft. That sentence changed everything. The judge released me 2 days later. I could not return to the company. I could not contact most employees. I had to remain in Franklin County. My bank accounts were frozen. Daniel had already changed the locks on our house. He sent my clothes to Rachel's office in black trash bags. Inside one bag, I found my wedding photograph broken in half. His side was missing. I moved into my mother's old house because no one else was living there yet. It was a large brick home in a quiet neighborhood near the river. I had grown up there. Every room held a memory. The house also held signs that someone had searched it. Desk drawers stood open. Papers were missing. The small wall safe in my mother's bedroom had been emptied. Megan claimed she was looking for estate documents. I knew she was lying. The night after I returned, I walked through the house with every light on. I was afraid, but I was also watching. My mother had been private, not careless. If she had suspected theft, she would have kept records. The police report said she died from a stroke in her kitchen. The housekeeper found her beside the breakfast table. But my mother had called me the night before she died. I had missed the call because Daniel and I were fighting. She left a message. Claire, I found something. It is worse than we thought. Come tomorrow morning. And do not tell Daniel. I listened to that message until every word burned into me. I gave it to Rachel. Rachel immediately requested my mother's medical records and phone data. She also hired a forensic accountant named Luis Ortega, who agreed to work at a reduced fee because his father had lived in one of our facilities. Luis was quiet and methodical. He did not promise miracles. He looked at the bank records and said, "Someone built this to survive a basic investigation. That means they expected questions." He found the first crack within 48 hours. The transfers carrying my digital signature had all been approved from my office computer. But 3 of them happened while I was attending a medical conference in Denver. Daniel had told police I could have accessed the computer remotely. Luis discovered that remote access had been disabled on my account months earlier. Only the chief financial officer could reactivate it. Daniel. That did not prove my innocence, but it proved his story had problems. The next clue came from my mother's kitchen. I was cleaning because I could not sleep. My mother had always kept handwritten recipes in a wooden box near the stove. Most were stained with flour and cooking oil. One card felt thicker than the others. 2 cards had been glued together. Inside them was a tiny brass key. On the back of the card, my mother had written one sentence. Where your father kept winter. My father had loved old clocks. After he died, my mother placed his collection in a storage unit because Megan said the ticking made her nervous. The storage company was called Winterhouse Storage. The key opened Unit 214. Rachel wanted me to wait for the police. I refused. I was tired of waiting while other people controlled my life. Rachel came with me anyway. So did Louise. The unit contained 20 wooden clocks, 3 boxes of family photographs, and an old metal filing cabinet. The brass key opened the cabinet. Inside were copies of company records, a small voice recorder, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. My mother's letter was dated 11 days before her death. Claire, if you are reading this, I may have run out of time. Do not trust the first person who offers to help you. Do not trust any document simply because it carries my signature. Someone inside our family is moving money and changing the trust. I made one mistake. I told Graham Vale what I suspected. Now I believe Graham is involved. Find the red ledger. Do not let anger make you careless. Love, Mom. Graham Vale had been my mother's attorney for 22 years. He had written our wills. He had handled every property purchase. He had eaten Thanksgiving dinner in our home. After my arrest, he was the first person who visited me. He told me he was sorry. He offered to represent me. I had almost accepted. That was what my mother meant. Do not trust the first person who offers to help. Rachel took the letter and made copies. Lewis examined the records. They showed unusual management fees paid to a consulting company called North Star Advisory. North Star belonged to a man named Aaron Pike. Aaron was Megan's boyfriend, before she suddenly announced they had broken up 6 months earlier. At least, that was what she told us. Louise discovered Aaron still paid the rent on Megan's apartment. The affair with Daniel was real, but it was not the whole story. Megan had 2 men helping her, or 2 men using her. The voice recorder held 7 files. Most were ordinary notes from my mother. One contained a conversation with Graham. My mother's voice was weak but clear. She accused him of altering trust documents. Graham denied it. Then she said, Daniel is moving money through Megan. I have the original ledger. There was a long silence. Graham asked, Where is it? My mother answered, Somewhere you will never look. The recording ended. The red ledger was not in the storage unit. We searched the house for 3 days. We opened vents, checked attic boxes, removed books from shelves, and looked under loose floorboards. Nothing. Meanwhile, the case against me grew worse. A local newspaper published an article calling me the greedy daughter. Former employees who once smiled at me gave interviews about my controlling behavior. Daniel released a statement saying he was heartbroken, but had a duty to protect residents and staff. Megan stood beside him during the interview. She wore black and spoke about family pain. At the end, Daniel put his hand on her back. The photograph went everywhere. People assumed they had become close because of the crisis. Only I knew how close. Then Daniel filed for divorce. He asked the court for our house, our investments, and temporary control of my company shares. His filing said I had hidden criminal assets. It was a brutal move, but it also gave Rachel an idea. Divorce meant discovery. Daniel would have to disclose financial records. He might keep away from the criminal court. Rachel referred me to a divorce attorney named Naomi Wells. Naomi had white hair, red glasses, and the calm voice of someone who enjoyed watching liars walk into walls. She subpoenaed Daniel's personal bank accounts, travel records, and phone bills. Daniel fought every request. The judge ordered him to comply. What we found surprised even Louise. Daniel had not received most of the stolen money. He had received enough to pay off debts and buy Megan expensive gifts, but not enough to explain the full scheme. Millions in company assets were being positioned for a future sale. Someone planned to weaken Bennett Senior Living, destroy my credibility, gain control, and sell the facilities to a national corporation. Graham Vale represented that corporation. My mother had not just discovered theft. She had discovered a takeover. Megan would inherit voting control under the altered trust. Daniel would remain chief financial officer. Graham would arrange the sale and collect a hidden fee. I was the obstacle because my real shares, combined with my mother's original trust, gave me controlling interest. They needed me disgraced or imprisoned. They also needed the red ledger, because it contained the original ownership records. The question was where my mother had hidden it. One evening, I sat alone in her kitchen and listened to her old voicemail again. I found something. It is worse than we thought. Come tomorrow morning. In the background, I heard a sound I had ignored before. 3 slow chimes. Then 2 fast ones. My father's clocks had different tones. As a child, I could recognize them from anywhere in the house. The chime on the voicemail came from his red mantel clock. But that clock was not in the storage unit. I checked old photographs. There it was in nearly every picture of my father's study. Small, red, with a brass moon on the face. Megan had taken it after he died. She said it reminded her of him. I called Rachel. We could not search Megan's apartment without permission or a warrant. So I did something risky. I invited my sister to lunch. I chose a crowded restaurant downtown. I arrived early and sat where cameras could see us. Megan walked in wearing a cream coat and my mother's pearl earrings. She smiled as though we were meeting to discuss holiday plans. "I'm glad you called," she said. "I hate what this is doing to us." I wanted to throw water in her face. Instead, I smiled. "I'm tired of fighting." Her eyes sharpened. I told her I knew I could not win. I said the company was ruined for me. I said I would sign over my shares if Daniel dropped the divorce claims and she helped reduce my sentence. Megan leaned back. For 1 second, relief crossed her face. Then she became careful. "I don't control Daniel. You control him enough." Her smile disappeared. I continued. "I know about both of you." She said nothing. I asked how long it had been happening. She looked toward the window. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." Megan lowered her voice. "Daniel was lonely. You treated him like an employee." That was how she justified it. She had helped steal my husband, my freedom, and my mother's company, but she still needed me to be the villain. I almost lost control. Then I remembered my mother's warning. Do not let anger make you careless. I placed a folder on the table. Inside was a fake draft agreement prepared by Naomi. It offered to transfer my voting rights after a private meeting at my mother's house. Megan read it twice. Why the house? Because that is where Mom wanted the family to stay together. The lie tasted bitter. Megan agreed to think about it. Before she left, I touched one pearl earring. "Those belong to Mom. She gave them to me?" "No," I said. "You took them before she was buried." For the first time, shame appeared on her face. It vanished quickly. That afternoon, a private investigator followed Megan home. 2 hours later, she carried a box to her car and drove to Graham Vale's office. The red clock was inside the box. We knew because the investigator photographed it when she opened her trunk. Rachel took the photograph to the prosecutor. The prosecutor had ignored us before. Now he listened. He still would not dismiss my case, but he requested a warrant for Graham's office based on the altered trust, hidden fees, and my mother's recording. The judge approved a limited search. The clock was gone. Graham said Megan had brought him old family documents for a state review. He denied seeing a clock, but the search found something useful. A paper shredder bag contained pieces of a red leather cover. The ledger had been there. Someone had destroyed it, or wanted us to believe they had. The forensic team reconstructed several pages. They showed original share allocations and handwritten notes by my father. One note referred to duplicate certificates held at First Ohio Trust. There was a duplicate. My mother had hidden the clue in the clock, not the ledger itself. First Ohio Trust had merged with a larger bank years earlier. Its old records were stored in a secure archive. Getting them required a court order. Graham moved quickly to stop us. He filed documents claiming my mother had suffered cognitive decline. He produced a doctor's letter stating she was confused during her final months. The doctor was real. The letter was not. Rachel noticed the date, used the wrong address for the clinic. Louise found a payment from North Star Advisory to the doctor's private foundation. The doctor admitted Graham had asked him to sign a general statement about my mother's health. Graham later changed the wording. That was forgery. The prosecutor finally began to see the full picture. Then our best witness disappeared. Aaron Pike was supposed to meet the private investigator at a motel outside Dayton. He had contacted us through an encrypted email and claimed Megan had framed me. He never arrived. His car was found at the airport. A ticket had been purchased in his name for Mexico City, but airport cameras never showed him boarding. For 2 days, we feared he was dead. On the 3rd day, Aaron called me. He sounded terrified. He said Graham had threatened him. He also said Megan had not planned my mother's death. That sentence froze me. I asked what he meant. Aaron began crying. He told me my mother had confronted Megan at the house the morning she died. Megan had gone there to find the ledger. Daniel waited in the car. My mother became angry and reached for the phone. Megan grabbed her arm. My mother pulled away, lost her balance, and struck the edge of the kitchen counter. She was still alive. Megan panicked. Daniel entered the house. He wanted to call an ambulance. Then Graham arrived. Graham checked my mother's breathing and said an ambulance would bring police, questions, and an investigation. He told them to leave. The housekeeper found my mother 40 minutes later. The official cause of death was a stroke, but the injury may have triggered it. More important, immediate medical care might have saved her. I felt the room tilt. My sister had not intended to kill our mother. She had simply wanted money more than she wanted to help her. Daniel had stood there. Graham had made the decision. And then all of them had gone to the funeral and watched me get arrested. Aaron said he had proof. Graham recorded sensitive conversations to protect himself. Aaron had stolen a backup drive from Graham's office after realizing he might become the next person blamed. He wanted immunity and money. Rachel told him immunity was not ours to promise. He agreed to speak with the prosecutor. This time, he arrived. The drive contained audio files, scanned documents, photographs, and payment schedules. One recording captured Graham telling Daniel exactly how to frame me. Another captured Megan asking whether my mother could still change the trust. Graham answered, "Not if she is no longer considered competent." Then Megan asked, "And if she dies?" Graham said, "Then the version on file becomes reality." The final recording was made after my mother fell. Daniel's voice shook. "She needs a hospital." A Graham answered, "She needs silence." Megan whispered, "What if Claire finds out?" A Graham said, "Claire will be too busy defending herself." I listened once. I never listened again. The prosecutor arranged sealed indictments. But Rachel warned me that the case could still become complicated. Graham had money, influence, and years of experience hiding behind legal language. Daniel would claim coercion. Megan would claim panic. Aaron would be attacked as a criminal witness. The truth needed more than evidence. It needed timing. So we let them believe they were still winning. I told Megan I was ready to sign away my voting rights. Naomi prepared another fake agreement. This one required all interested parties to attend a private family settlement meeting at Bennett Sr., Living's main facility. Graham insisted on using his office. I refused. I said I wanted the signing to happen in the community room, where my mother had held the company's first annual meeting. Megan agreed because she believed I was broken. Daniel agreed because he wanted the divorce finished. Graham agreed because the corporation buying our company had scheduled its final board vote for the next morning. The settlement meeting took place on a Thursday evening. Rain pressed against the windows, just as it had on the day of the funeral. I arrived wearing a navy suit and no jewelry. Megan wore my mother's pearls. Daniel would not look at me. Graham smiled. On the table sat 3 copies of the transfer agreement. Hidden in the room were 2 investigators, the prosecutor, and a state financial crimes agent. They were listening through microphones installed with the facility director's permission. Aaron waited in another room. Rachel sat beside me. Naomi sat across from Daniel's attorney. Louise watched from the back. Graham began with a speech about ending pain and protecting the residents. I almost admired his nerve. Then he pushed the agreement toward me. "Once you sign," he said, "your sister will hold the voting authority. Daniel will withdraw his financial claims in the divorce. We will jointly recommend leniency in the criminal case." I picked up the pen. My hand did not shake. I looked at Megan. "Before I sign, I want to hear you say Mom wanted this." She hesitated. Graham answered for her. "Your mother signed the trust." I asked Megan. Megan's face hardened. "Yes. Mom wanted me to control the company. Even though you never worked here. She knew I could learn. Even though she told you not to sell." Megan looked at Graham. That was the first mistake. I leaned forward. "Did she tell you that before or after she fell in the kitchen?" Daniel stood so quickly his chair hit the floor. Graham did not move. Megan turned pale. Rachel placed a copy of the storage unit letter on the table. Then Naomi placed the reconstructed ledger pages beside it. Louis added the bank archive certification, proving my controlling shares. Graham stared at the documents. His confidence changed into calculation. He looked toward the door. It opened. Aaron stepped into the room. Megan whispered his name. Aaron would not look at her. The prosecutor entered behind him with 2 investigators. Daniel began talking immediately. He said Graham planned everything. Graham told him to remain silent. Megan started crying. Not the controlled tears she used for cameras. Real tears. Frightened tears. She looked at me as though I could save her. For most of my life, I had. When she failed school, I helped her study. When she crashed Mom's car, I took the blame. When she borrowed money, I never asked for it back. When she lied, I softened the truth. That evening, I finally understood that rescuing someone from every consequence does not make them better. Sometimes it teaches them that consequences belong to other people. I stood. "Megan, I loved you enough to protect you for 30 years. She reached for me. I stepped back. Now I love Mom enough to stop." The investigators arrested Graham first. He asked for his attorney, which would have been funny if the room had not been filled with so much grief. Daniel was arrested for fraud, conspiracy, evidence tampering, and obstruction. Megan was arrested for conspiracy, fraud, theft, and failing to seek aid after my mother's fall. Aaron received a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation. The charges against me were dismissed the next morning. The prosecutor made the announcement on the courthouse steps. Reporters shouted questions. They asked how I felt. I said, "My mother built a company to care for people when they were vulnerable." The people who betrayed her confused kindness with weakness. They were wrong. I did not mention revenge. People misunderstand revenge. They imagine screaming, violence, or destruction. My revenge was quieter. I took back every piece of my life they tried to steal. The divorce judge awarded me our house after Daniel's hidden accounts were exposed. I sold it without spending. One more night there. I used part of the money to establish an emergency legal fund for employees falsely accused of financial misconduct. Bennett's senior living remained independent. The board elected me chief executive officer. I added an employee representative to the board and required 2 person approval for major transfers. No single executive, including me, would ever have the power Daniel abused. Graham lost his law license before his criminal trial began. The national corporation denied knowing about his methods, but documents on the backup drive proved 2 executives had authorized secret fees. They were charged later. Daniel accepted a plea deal after learning Graham planned to blame everything on him. He received 11 years in federal prison. Before sentencing, he wrote me a letter. He said he had loved me. He said Megan made him feel admired. He said Graham manipulated him. He asked me to remember the good years. I read the letter once. Then I mailed it back unopened inside a larger envelope. On the front, I wrote one sentence. The good years were real to me. That is why your betrayal was real too. Megan's trial was the hardest part. Her attorney showed childhood photographs. He described her anxiety, her debts, and her lifelong fear of disappointing our mother. All of those things were true. None of them changed what she did. Megan testified. She admitted taking my coat and using my security code. She admitted helping Daniel access my computer. She admitted searching the house. She said, Graham told her my mother had already ruined the company and that the sale would save it. Then the prosecutor asked about the kitchen. Megan cried so hard the judge called a break. When court resumed, she admitted our mother was breathing when she left. She admitted hearing our mother whisper my name. That detail broke something inside me. For months, I had wondered whether my mother was afraid at the end. Now I knew she had called for me. I also knew I had missed her call the night before, because I was fighting with Daniel. Guilt is a patient animal. It waits until the room is quiet, then climbs into your chest. For a long time, I blamed myself. Rachel finally told me, missing a phone call is not a crime. Leaving an injured woman without help is. I repeated that sentence until I believed it. The jury found Megan guilty on every major count. She received 8 years. At sentencing, she turned toward me. I'm sorry, she said. I believed she was sorry. But I did not know whether she was sorry for our mother, sorry for me, or sorry that she had lost. Maybe she did not know either. After the trial, I returned to my mother's house alone. The estate court confirmed the original trust. The house belonged to me. For months, I had treated it like a crime scene. That day, I opened the windows. I washed the kitchen floor. I put my father's clocks back on the shelves. The red Mantel clock had been damaged when investigators recovered it, but a repairman restored the mechanism. At 3 o'clock, it chimed again. 3 slow notes, 2 fast ones. I sat at the table and cried until the room blurred. Under the table, taped to the wood, I found one final envelope. I do not know how every search missed it. My name was written on the front. Inside was a short letter in my mother's handwriting. Claire, I know you think strength means carrying everything alone. It does not. Strength means knowing what must be carried and what must be put down. You may lose people when you choose the truth. Let them go. A family name is not protected by hiding shame. It is protected by refusing to pass shame to the next generation. Whatever happens, build something honest after me. Love always. Mom, I read the letter many times. Then I made one final decision. I donated the house to a nonprofit that provided temporary housing for older women escaping financial abuse. Megan had wanted the house because it represented status. Daniel had wanted it because it represented victory. Graham had wanted its documents because they represented control. I turned it into shelter. That was the part of my revenge no courtroom could give me. A year later, Bennett Senior Living opened a 5th facility. We named it Evelyn House. At the opening ceremony, residents, nurses, families, and employees filled the courtyard. Louis stood near the front. Rachel and Naomi sat together, whispering and laughing. A reporter asked whether I still thought about the people who betrayed me. I told her the truth. Yes, but I no longer live inside what they did. That evening, after everyone left, I walked through the new building alone. The halls smelled like fresh paint and coffee. In the main room, the red clock rested on a shelf. I wound it carefully. For years, I thought revenge meant making the people who hurt me feel the pain they caused. I was wrong. Real revenge was taking the future they tried to erase and living every day of it. They stole money. I rebuilt trust. They stole my name. I made it mean something again. They left my mother alone in her final hour. I built a place where no one would be left alone. At midnight, the red clock began to chime. I stood beneath it and listened. Then I turned off the lights and walked out without looking back. Because the best revenge was never watching them fall. It was becoming someone they could never destroy.